Most men don't lose their way all at once. They drift, slowly, quietly, one compromise at a time. They say yes when they should say no. They tolerate what they know isn't right. They bend their standards to keep the peace, to keep a woman, to avoid discomfort. And one day they wake up feeling frustrated, resentful, and disconnected from who they used to be, without being able to point to a single moment where it all went wrong. That's because the real damage didn't come from one bad decision. It came from abandoning principle. A man without principles isn't evil, weak, or broken. He's just unanchored. He reacts instead of choosing. He negotiates his boundaries in the moment instead of living by them. And when life applies pressure, relationships, conflict, temptation, fear, he folds, not because he lacks strength, but because he lacks a code. Principle is what holds a man steady when emotions run high. It's what tells you who you are before the situation tries to decide for you. When you live without it, everything becomes situational. Your standards change depending on who's watching. Your behavior changes depending on what you might lose. And over time, that erodes self-respect. Because deep down, you know you're not standing on anything solid. This video isn't about becoming rigid, moralistic, or superior to others. It's about becoming consistent, predictable to yourself, trustworthy in your own eyes. A man of principle doesn't need to argue his worth or prove his strength. His actions already do that quietly. If you've ever felt like you're constantly compromising, constantly explaining, constantly adjusting yourself to fit situations that don't sit right with you, this is where that stops. Because the moment a man commits to principle, his entire life changes. Not overnight, but permanently. And once you feel what it's like to live aligned with yourself, you'll never willingly go back. Most men don't wake up one day and decide to abandon their values. It happens quietly, through repetition. A small lie to avoid conflict. Staying silent when something feels wrong. Letting disrespect slide because it's not worth the argument. Each moment seems harmless on its own, but together they form a pattern. And that pattern reshapes who you are. The biggest lie men tell themselves is that compromising their principles is maturity. That being agreeable, flexible, and understanding at all times makes them strong. In reality, it makes them unstable. When you don't know what you stand for, every situation becomes negotiable. Your boundaries move depending on fear, attraction, or pressure. And the more they move, the less seriously both you and others take them. This is why so many men feel resentment in their relationships and lives. Not because they're being treated unfairly, but because they're allowing situations that violate their inner code. You feel drained, irritated, or disconnected. Not because someone did something wrong, but because you didn't act in alignment with yourself. And your nervous system remembers every time you betrayed that alignment. A man without principle becomes reactive. He adjusts his behavior based on how others respond instead of what he believes is right. He over-explains, he negotiates respect, he stays longer than he should, and deep down, he knows it. That's why confidence fades, because confidence isn't about bravado or dominance, it's about self-trust. And you can't trust yourself if your word to yourself means nothing. Principle is the internal line you don't cross, even when it costs you something. Especially when it costs you something. Without it, strength becomes situational. With it, strength becomes stable. This is where real masculinity begins. Not in control over others, but in control over your own standards. If you don't define your principles, life will test you until you break. But once you do, those same tests stop feeling like threats and start feeling like filters. When a man doesn't live by principle, his mind never settles. He's constantly second-guessing himself, replaying conversations, wondering if he said too much or not enough. That inner noise isn't anxiety by accident. It's the cost of inconsistency. When your actions don't line up with what you believe, your mind stays in conflict, and conflict drains energy faster than any external problem ever could. This shows up most clearly in relationship. A man without principle becomes emotionally reactive. He says things he doesn't mean just to keep peace. He tolerates behavior that quietly erodes his self-respect. He explains himself over and over, hoping clarity will earn respect. But respect is never earned through explanation. It's earned through consistency. And consistency only exists when a man knows where his line is and refuses to step past it. Over time, people begin to sense this instability. Not consciously, instinctively. They feel that your boundaries shift depending on mood, attraction, or fear of loss. And when boundaries move, trust weakens. This is why men who lack principle often feel unseen or taken for granted. It's not because others are cruel. It's because there's nothing solid to push against. No fixed edge. No quiet authority. Living without principle also creates resentment. You give more than you want to. You stay longer than you should. You sacrifice pieces of yourself and then feel angry that no one notices. But the truth is uncomfortable. You trained people to expect that version of you. Not because you're weak, but because you never enforced your inner code. A man with principle doesn't need to argue, dominate, or control. His calm comes from alignment. He doesn't feel the urge to prove himself because he already knows who he is. And that energy changes everything. Conversations become simpler. Decisions become cleaner. Relationships become more honest, even if fewer people qualify to stay. This is the shift most men never make. They chase confidence, presence, and respect, without realizing those traits are symptoms. Principle is the root. Without it, everything else is performance. With it, everything becomes natural. Here's the part nobody warns you about. Becoming a man of principle will cost you people, comfort, familiar dynamics, easy validation. The moment you stop bending, stop explaining, stop negotiating your self-respect, things start to shift, and not everyone comes with you. This is why most men avoid principle altogether. It's easier to stay flexible, agreeable, and available than it is to stand firm and risk friction. Principle forces decisions. It forces endings. It forces you to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. And most men would rather tolerate quiet resentment than face short-term loss. When you live by principle, you will disappoint people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Some will call you cold. Others will say you've changed. A few will try to guilt you back into the version of yourself they could control. None of that means you're wrong. It means your line is finally visible. This is especially true in relationships. A man of principle doesn't threaten to leave. He simply leaves when his line is crossed. He doesn't argue endlessly. He observes behavior. He doesn't demand respect. He removes access when it's absent. That level of clarity is unsettling to people who rely on ambiguity to get their way. There's also an internal cost. Principle removes excuses. You can't blame confusion, mixed signals, or circumstances when your code is clear. Every choice becomes your responsibility. That's heavy. But it's also freeing. Because once you accept responsibility, you stop feeling powerless. You stop waiting for permission to act. Most men confuse peace with avoidance. They think staying quiet, staying agreeable, staying in situations that don't fit is maturity. It's not. It's fear disguised as calm. Real calm comes from knowing that even if everything falls apart, you'll still respect yourself in the aftermath. This is the quiet trade-off. Short-term discomfort for long-term stability. Temporary loneliness for permanent self-respect. A smaller circle for a stronger core. Men who avoid principle avoid pain, but they also avoid growth. Men who embrace it pay the price once, and then live free. This is where the separation happens. Not between strong and weak men, but between men who are tired of drifting and men who are ready to stand for something, even if they have to stand alone. Once your principles are clear, something subtle but powerful happens. Your identity stabilizes. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop adjusting your behavior based on reactions. You stop needing constant feedback to know who you are. That inner certainty changes how you move through the world. This is what people feel when they say a man has presence. It's not confidence in the loud sense. It's not dominance. It's coherence. Your words, actions, boundaries, and decisions all come from the same place. Nothing is scattered. Nothing is forced. You're no longer negotiating with yourself every time pressure shows up. Women feel this immediately. Not because you're trying to impress them, but because inconsistency disappears. A man without principles is unpredictable in the worst way. Today he's firm, tomorrow he folds, next week he resents. A man with principles is predictable in the best way. His reactions make sense. His standards don't fluctuate. His calm isn't performative. It's structural. This is why a man of principle doesn't need to explain himself repeatedly. He doesn't over-justify boundaries. He doesn't chase validation after conflict. His behavior already explains him. And when someone pushes against his limits, they don't get drama. They get distance. That's clarity. That's strength. Principles also remove the need to control outcomes. When you know what you stand for, you don't panic when things don't go your way. You don't scramble to keep people who don't align. You don't stay where respect is conditional. You trust yourself to walk away because your identity isn't attached to approval. It's anchored in values. This is the moment a man stops asking, "How do I get respect?" and starts living in a way where respect is the natural byproduct. Not because everyone likes him, but because everyone knows where he stands. A man without principles is always reacting. A man with principles is choosing. And once you experience that level of internal alignment, you don't go back. Because nothing feels worse than betraying yourself just to keep the peace. This is the part most men miss. Becoming a man of principle isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about deciding who you are before pressure shows up, so you're not negotiating your values in the heat of the moment. When your principles are clear, life gets simpler. Not easier, simpler. You stop entertaining what drains you. You stop explaining what should be obvious. You stop betraying yourself just to keep things comfortable. And here's the truth. The men who struggle the most aren't weak. They're unanchored. They don't lack ability. They lack a code. A man without principles will always be pulled by circumstance, emotion, and other people's expectations. A man with principles moves differently. He chooses his battles. He chooses his relationships. He chooses himself without guilt. If this video made you reflect, that's a sign you're ready to live with more intention. This channel is about building that inner structure, discipline, emotional control, standards, and self-respect. So you don't just talk about being a strong man, you become one. If you got value from this, like the video. It helps more men find this message. Subscribe if you want deeper breakdowns like this every week. And comment below. What principle are you committing to from today onward? This is where real strength is built.